Hey, Josh.
Hi everyone, my name's Julia Larkin, and like Attorney General James, I'm a born and bred Brooklynite. I go to school at American University in DC, and I'm currently the Programs Director for College Dems of America. With over 600 campus chapters nationwide, College Dems are the official student arm of the Democratic Party, and chapters across the country are the reason Democrats have been winning on the local, state, and federal level. We flipped the House in 2018 thanks to College Dems. We flipped Virginia in 2019 because of College Dems. And in 2020, we will take back the Senate and the White House because of College Dems. College students aren't just the future of this party. We are an integral part of this party, and we truly appreciate the support we get from the Democratic Attorney General Association and progressive champions like the Attorney Generals on this panel today. And without further ado, we'll open it up to opening remarks from the Attorney Generals. And we will start with Maryland Attorney General Brian Frosh.
Julia, hi. Thanks very much for having me here. It's a pleasure to be with you. And I think people wanted to know what the job of an attorney general is like. And I just wanted to say that we have an extraordinarily powerful tool for protecting our citizens, for improving their lives, for delivering justice. And since I've been in office, we've recovered hundreds of millions of dollars for our state and for our citizens from Wall Street banks, payday lenders, tobacco companies, polluters. We've indicted and put behind bars some of the most dangerous people in our state, human traffickers, gun runners, drug traffickers, payday lenders, et cetera. We stand up for important public policies. We were the first state in the nation to issue guidance to all law enforcement officers in Maryland to prohibit racial profiling, discriminatory profiling. We fought against money bail and succeeded. That's a policy that keeps poor people locked up before they've been convicted. We've put nursing homes and unlicensed assisted living facilities that abuse their patients out of business. And the point is that the attorneys general have the ability to do great things for their people. And the fight against the Donald Trump administration has been going on for the past 4 years. And the attorneys general of the Democratic states have done an outstanding job. You'll hear from my colleagues in a minute. They're terrific, talented people. And I think that we've achieved great success when we have stood up against the Trump administration's illegal, unconstitutional policies.
Great. And we are also joined by Connecticut Attorney General William Tom.
Hey, thanks, Julia, and thanks, College Democrats of America, for all of your work. We need every single one of you out there across the country working hard for our entire ticket, and in particular, Vice President Joe Biden and future Vice President Kamala Harris, a former AG, I should know. And there's a lot of us former AGs out there serving at various levels, and it's because being an AG puts you in the middle of really right now, every major battle, every major fight of consequence, AGs are engaged. Choice, DACA, the Affordable Care Act, and I think you saw yesterday how we stand together. General Frosh mentioned our work against this administration to protect our way of life, the rule of law, and our Constitution and our republic. You saw yesterday how Democratic AGs across the country joined together as a firewall to protect our country, the Postal Service, and to make sure that this election coming up is fair, transparent, and accurate. And every day we do this work, we're going to hear more about not just our work standing up to the President of the United States, and his unconstitutional and illegal actions against not just the states, but our country. But you're going to hear about our work in consumer protection, in keeping people safe across the country. And it's just a real honor to be part of this group of strong advocates and people who work every day to protect the people in their state.
Yeah, Democratic attorney generals have definitely been the last line of defense against the Trump administration and their actions. So I'm really looking forward to hearing more about all the work y'all are doing.
Thank you. First line of defense, too. First and last.
It's true. And then we have Massachusetts Attorney General Maura Healey.
Hey, thanks, Julia, and good morning, everyone. So, you college Dems, you guys are out there, you're organizing, you're energized. And if there's one thing I want you to take back to your groups, to your cities and towns, those, you work within the Democratic Party, I don't think you're going to find an office, except maybe one, that we're hopefully going to fix in November, that is of more consequence, okay? So just so you know, like the action is with state AGs. Let me tell you what we can do, okay? We're independently elected. We don't have to get permission from state legislatures. We don't have to get permission from our governors. We just act, and we can investigate, we can hold hearings, we can sue, and we've done a lot of that against Trump. And as my colleagues have said, no group has been more successful, Congress, anybody, than the Democratic AGs in terms of the results for people, which we're going to talk about. But, I also want you to know that we're the people's lawyer. So we are regularly out there. We're holding town halls. We're talking to people. We were the first to act on the opioid crisis that devastated so many. We get to propose legislation. We get to do the bully pulpit and be out there with messaging. And so I don't think that political parties have paid enough attention to, or the Democratic Party has paid enough attention to state attorneys generals. It's a powerful group, okay? There are 435 members of the House and another 100 senators. There are only 50 of us state AGs, and we have tremendous power within our jurisdictions, and we've got massive power when the bunch of us work together, which is what your Democratic AGs have been doing for the last 4 years. So take that message back. Make sure you're investing in AG races. You can really turn the page and make a huge difference depending on who your AG is.
Thank you for that, Attorney General Healey. And we will move on to Pennsylvania Attorney General Josh Shapiro.
Well, hey, good morning, everyone. It's great to be with you. It's great to be with the College Dems. Julia, thank you so much for getting us all together. And I really want to thank my colleagues who you've heard from and those that you will hear from. They're my friends, they're my partners, they're brilliant lawyers, and they're awesome leaders in their states. And I got to tell you, William Tong and Maura Healey are right, and they're right on multiple levels. Number one, AGs are where it's at. And number two, I think William couldn't decide if we were the first line of defense or the last line of defense. However you look at it, he's right. And you look at our track record. We stand up for the rule of law. We stand up for our citizens. And when we fight, we work together and we win, most importantly. Not too many other offices around the country can point to the track record that we've had on clear accomplishments that impact people. My colleagues have talked about some of the suits we've brought against Donald Trump. Hey, Julia, I want you and your friends and colleagues to know in college and when you graduate, you'll be living with this just like I am. We've taken on some of the biggest for-profit colleges, some of the biggest student loan companies in the country to deal with the student debt crisis that's impacting students and their families across the country. And when we take on those fights, we not only win by holding the big institutions accountable, we get you all your money back. And that's something that we're really proud of, along with so many other things that we're going to talk about here today. So it's great to be here with my colleagues. I'm glad to be with you, Julia, and I look forward to the conversation. Thanks so much, guys. I look forward to hopefully visiting with the College Dems in Pennsylvania in person very soon. We're doing a ton of Zooms, but it'll be nice to actually get together in person again. Thanks.
Thank you. And now we'll move on to Vermont Attorney General TJ Donovan.
Julia, Thanks for having me. Great to be with you. Great to be with the College Democrats. Hey, I want to thank you guys for your leadership, for your activism, because you guys are changing this country for the better. And you are the most important people who are going to elect Joe Biden, the next president of the United States. So I want to thank you in advance for the work you guys are doing in changing this country for the better, to fighting to level the playing field for everybody in this country, because that's exactly the work the AGs do. We fight for equality. We fight for common sense. We fight for fairness, for inclusion, for giving everybody an opportunity in this country. And I want to thank you for the work you guys do, whether it's climate change, whether it's the issues of civil rights, whether it's the issue of consumer protection, whether it's the issue of making sure that we hold America out as that beacon of hope for people to come to this country, to seek the American dream. That's what the Democratic AGs have been fighting for these last 4 years against Donald Trump and his corrupt administration. And I know you guys have been our partners the whole way. Okay.
Sorry. No, you continue. Sorry.
No, all good. All good. There's much more to say.
All right. Attorney General Letitia James from New York will join us in a bit, but we will move on to our first question. So like all of you said, Democratic attorney generals are both the first and last line of defense against the Trump administration. And the current Dem AG coalition is constantly using the power of their offices to fight for people on issues like DACA, the Affordable Care Act, meaningful access to healthcare, postal service and voter protection, climate change and clean water, and the list goes on and on. Can you each briefly talk about why Democratic AGs are so important to protecting the rule of law? And we could start off with Vermont Attorney General TJ Donovan.
Sure, thank you. It's because this is what we do. This is our job. And when you talk about fairness, when you talk about inclusion, when you talk about equality, everybody has a right to breathe clean air and drink clean water. We will fight against corporations who have polluted not only areas in our state of Vermont, but across this nation. When it comes to making sure that people can go and get a higher education at an affordable rate and not getting ripped off with these high interest student loans, we'll do the great work that my colleagues Maura Healy and Josh Shapiro have done on leading against student loan predators. When it comes to making sure that we stand up for the dreamers, that they still believe and we still believe in the dream of this country, we will fight tooth and nail to the last breath to make sure that everybody has a shot at the American dream. This is the work we do. I know you've been with us the whole time, Julie, and the College Dems. Thank you so much. And listen, as a Vermonter, as a small state guy, I am so grateful for the great work of my colleagues because they lead not only those that are with us today, but across this nation. The Democratic AGs have led since day one in fighting the Trump administration.
Yeah, and thank you for that. We'll move on to Maryland Attorney General Brian Frosh.
Thanks, Julia. Look, yesterday was a great example, I think. We filed suit along with 13 other AGs and I think William and TJ, and I know Josh and Maura and Tish are gearing up to file a suit against Donald Trump and the United States Postal Service for their attempts to undermine our election in November. They've made threats. Donald Trump has said he's not going to allow the post office to get the funds he's needed. The post office has actually taken offline the sorting equipment that's necessary to process tens of thousands of letters every hour. They've refused to pay overtime. They've told the letter carriers to keep mail on the floor. And the purpose is twofold. Number one, it's to try to hobble the Postal Service so that they can't deliver the mail, and so that the election may be in doubt, will run past the night of November 3rd before we have an actual winner. And also to sow doubt, even if they don't manage to turn things upside down. Donald Trump is going to try to use this to say that the election was invalid, that it's a hoax. and try to cling to office. It's the most undemocratic action that I think we've seen in a long time, if not ever, in our country. And so what you see is the Democratic attorneys general together fighting back against this illegal, unconstitutional, and extremely harmful action. They're not only trying to destroy the election, they're hurting innocent bystanders, folks who are sitting by waiting for their Social Security checks, their unemployment checks, so that they can pay the rent, folks who depend upon getting their medicine in the mail. So lots and lots of people are being hurt. And when the attorneys general filed suit yesterday and announced other suits coming, the head of the Postal Service, DeJoy, said, "Oh, okay, wait a minute, we didn't mean it. We're backing down." I think that's a great example of the power of attorneys general. Now, we don't take him at his word. We're going to press forward. Whatever reforms and changes that are necessary to run a valid election in November, we're going to insist be in writing and approved by a court.
Thank you, Attorney General Frosch. And then we are joined by New York Attorney General Letitia James. Oh, never mind. We are not. We'll move on to Massachusetts Attorney General Maura Healey.
Hi. Yeah, just quickly on the rule of law. I don't think we've ever seen the rule of law and basic norms challenged and destroyed in the way that they have the last 4 years by Donald Trump. So, that's where we've been on so many fronts. We're going to talk more about that today. But I think, fundamental, to the operation of our government and our whole democracy, it's predicated on this notion that there are certain laws and rules by which society is going to abide. And that's what holds us together. And that's what's so really troubling about what we've seen. It's why folks like Tim Snyder, if you read his book on tyranny, are right. And it's why us AGs have been right there at every turn seeking to deal with abuse of power, corruption, and violations of attempts to eviscerate the rule of law.
Thank you, Attorney General Healey. And we will move on to Pennsylvania Attorney General Josh Shapiro.
Yeah, let me just pick up on what Maura said about the power of state attorneys general. I think sometimes when we bring a lawsuit, I'll have folks stop me at the supermarket or whatever and say, "I don't understand how you're allowed to sue the federal government in the state." And I remind them that lesson we had back in the 3rd or 4th grade. I think that's when my kids learned it. About horizontal checks and balances, the checks and balances we all learned about between Congress and the federal courts and the President of the United States, our 3 branches of government. What we didn't learn back in 4th grade, and boy, oh boy, have we all gotten a crash course on it over the last 3.5 years, is the set of equally important vertical checks and balances. The way in which our Constitution affords states the opportunity to hold the federal government accountable when they violate the law. Now, I know it sounds crazy that we have a president who acts outside the bounds of the law. But I think what should give a lot of people comfort in our system is that when we point that illegality out, when we use the authority we have as states and wind our way through the judicial process, we win. Because the rule of law at the end of the day matters more than who the occupant is in the White House or even who the occupant is in a state attorney general office. The reality is the rule of law is what binds us together and what keeps our nation strong. So the way I look at it is whether it's the President of the United States, some drug dealer on a corner of Pennsylvania, or some multinational corporation that takes advantage of the people of Pennsylvania, I'm looking at holding everybody accountable, no matter who they are. The laws of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and the laws of our nation, our constitutional rights, all give us that say in our democracy. And I'm proud, and I know my colleagues are really proud, to have that voice as we go forward. We're going to do everything in our power to make sure that everyone follows the law, no matter who they are.
Thank you for that, AG Shapiro. And we will move on to Connecticut Attorney General William Tong.
I'll just pick up on what Josh Shapiro said. I think AGs occupy a singular role right now because of what's happening in Washington. It's so hard for Congress to move business because Mitch McConnell is in charge of the Senate, and failing an effective overall federal legislature, a lot of these fights devolve to the states. And what that means is that principles of federalism, which is that vertical check and balance, enables states to act on behalf of our citizens. Each one of us, 50 of us, are sovereign, 50 sovereign states bound together by our consent in the United States of America. So each of us takes action. Democratic AGs are flexing our authority. Many people call it progressive federalism these days, but we do that in protection of the rule of law and our constitutional system and the civil rights of people in our states. So, for example, the president has obviously declared war on America's immigrants. And time after time, from the travel ban to the citizenship question, to the public charge rule, state AGs have fought those battles on the front line. And it's because of our unique set of tools in our toolbox that we can challenge the federal government both on constitutional grounds and on statutory grounds. And we can make the specific and pivotal legal arguments to federal courts that we can make a difference like nobody else. And so that's why on all of these fights, we're the ones who are able to step forward, challenge President Trump and defeat him because we have tools that nobody else has, and will continue to do that to make sure that our country stays the country that we all recognize and that we adhere to the rule of law and honor the civil rights of everybody.
Thank you for that, Attorney General Tong. And we are officially joined by New York Attorney General Letitia James.
Thank you so much. And I apologize. My internet service is going in and out. But I really want to thank you, Julie, and I want to thank all of the Democrats, college Democrats. Listen, in 75 days, we're going to end this cruel hoax on all of us. And we're going to restore dignity in what is good and what is right in this country. It's been a long 4 years and certainly a busy few years for Democratic attorney generals who have basically been defenders of our democracy. You see, I view the law as both a sword and as a shield. And it's really critically important that over the last 4 years that we've had to stand up against this administration. An administration which unfortunately has been hostile to immigrants and hostile to the rule of law and hostile to democracy as we know it. From blocking the citizenship question on the census, to the Muslim ban, to defending our environment, to the air that we breathe and the water that all of us drink, to safeguarding our health care rights, to safeguarding the rights of women, to having control over our own bodies and our own destiny. We have had to stand up time and time again. And the cruelty and the chaos that is coming from 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, it's more important now that we recognize the right to vote and that we all join together in defending, again, that basic and elementary right to vote. There are efforts to suppress the right of vote for people of color in our country. And it's really critically important that all of us understand what's at stake. And my friends, what's at stake is everything. And this administration has been hostile to everything that we believe in and all of the values of this country. And so we have been successful. And each and every day we wake up, again, defending the rule of law. And it's really a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. And I am honored and privileged to have been a part of a coalition that has stopped this administration. And we, again, will stand up to this administration and, again, prevent them from dismantling the United States Postal Service in an attempt to undermine our elections and our democracy, and also an attempt to hurt all of those who rely upon the Postal Service for their medicine. I stand with all of my colleagues and I stand with you. Democrats, we have to stand in quiet dignity. We've got to stand no matter what they throw at us, and we've got to vote in record numbers. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney General James. And now we will move on to Attorney General Shapiro. Yesterday, you in Washington State announced you will sue Postmaster General Louis DeJoy and the Postal Service to reverse recent service changes that seem to be sabotaging the mail system, leaving many of us concerned about making our votes count during a pandemic. Can you talk about your lawsuit and how you've worked with other states to protect our right to vote safely during a pandemic so our voices can be heard?
Yeah, Julia, thanks for your question. And I would just respectfully reframe it slightly. We may be the ones filing the suit in Pennsylvania, but every single attorney general on this Zoom call we're on is an active participant in it and standing up for the rule of law and to protect the mail service in their states. We are working together collectively on this issue. Look, let me say it this way. I think that there is enough out there to be really concerned about. We saw, for example, in Pennsylvania, regulatory or changes that were made of a regulatory nature back in July that has significantly slowed down the mail. We've got, for example, 800,000 veterans in Pennsylvania. 80% of them get their prescription drugs through the mail. They're seeing delays. We've seen small businesses unable to go through a procurement process or deal with payroll issues because the mail has slowed down. That's why we've all come together and filed this suit, not just because we think it's bad that there's slow mail, but because we as attorneys general deal with facts and evidence and the law. And in this case, the slowdown of the mail actually violates the law. Why is that? Well, there's something called the Postal Regulatory Commission that actually requires changes like the one I just described briefly that happened back in July. Those changes actually have to go for review. Experts have to look at it and determine if it's the right thing to do. So Donald Trump and his appointed Postmaster General can't just do that willy-nilly on their own. So I'm concerned about that. But I also want to say, I think there's enough that we can all be confident in when it comes to the USPS and our upcoming election, where you're going to have tens of millions of Americans and certainly millions of Pennsylvanians who will vote by mail. What we're learning through this process, particularly after 20 or so of us go to court, moments later, the Postmaster General says, whoa, I'm actually going to not do what I said I was going to do. What we're learning is that the attorneys general are a hell of a check on the system, albeit no one's willing to accept Postmaster General at his word. I think we've learned from the Trump administration you can't take them at their word. But we'll wait and see concrete steps they're taking to roll back what they've done and stop any changes going forward. But that said, it's a great example of how the rule of law, how attorneys general who are committed to the rule of law are able to hold people accountable. And we're doing everything in our power when it comes to USPS and in other ways to safeguard the elections within our states and commonwealths. Because we recognize at the end of the day, your vote is what gives you a place in our democracy. And what Donald Trump is trying to do is sow doubt on our democracy, sow doubt on this election process. Why is he doing that? Well, in part, he's got a selfish interest because he thinks if he can shut down certain votes, right? Votes from communities of color, votes from progressive areas. If he can shut down certain votes, he might actually have a shot to win this thing. But there's a deeper issue here. And this is something we've seen from the president over and over again. He's doing this because he wants to make you feel powerless. He wants to make you feel as though your voice counts just a little bit less, that it doesn't have the same power in our democracy. Well, here's the great thing about Election Day and the election season, if you vote prior to Election Day. Everybody's vote counts equally, no matter what the president says. And here's the other great thing you should know. Attorneys general, well, we're the people's lawyers. We fight to make sure every one of those people's voice is heard in our process. And so that's why this lawsuit was so important, to demonstrate the power of those checks and balances, to call out the Postmaster General for his illegal activity, to get us back to allowing the great postal workers just to do their jobs, because when they do their jobs, the mail gets delivered on time and it works well. We don't want the leadership messing with the good postal workers all across this country. And I believe that as we do that, we will help protect our democracy and demonstrate the power of the attorneys general on this call.
Thank you, Attorney General Shapiro. We'll move on to Attorney General James. Hashtag dissolve the NRA has a really nice ring to it. Can you explain how your office ended up filing a lawsuit against the NRA, and what exactly is this case about?
So this case against the NRA has nothing to do with my personal views on gun violence. In fact, it has nothing to do with taking away anyone's guns and or the Second Amendment. This case has to do with the not-for-profit laws of the state of New York. The NRA was organized under the not-for-profit laws in the state of New York back in 1871. And we have a responsibility to ensure that the mission of not-for-profit organizations are carried out, that the assets of a not-for-profit are not squandered. And so the NRA has been an organization that has gone unchecked for a number of years. And as a result of our investigation over the last 19 months, related to some facts that laid bare on the cover of just about every media outlet in this country, we decided to investigate. And my office found that the NRA and several top executives conducted its business in a persistently fraudulent and illegal manner. And the NRA is, unfortunately, has been so powerful that its top executives basically diverted and funneled millions and millions of dollars into their own pockets and to the pockets of their inner circle. And as a result, we are seeking to hold this corporation accountable for their actions. And so we seek to dissolve the NRA. We also seek to bar these 4 individuals led by Wayne LaPierre from serving on any not-for-profits in the state of New York. We seek restitution so that we can recover funds, so that funds that will be distributed to other organizations with a similar mission. They led very lavish lifestyles on the dime of so many donors. And there were a number of whistleblowers within the corporation. And those whistleblowers, their complaints, unfortunately, were not addressed. And Mr. LaPierre basically used the money of donors to gain their loyalty, the loyalty of individuals on a corporate board, the individuals on an audit committee that had a fiduciary duty to ensure that the mission was met. The organization basically diverted so many dollars from its charitable mission that the NRA today, unfortunately, is in a weakened state. And so the NRA has been a breeding ground of abuse, of brazen illegality for quite some time. And it was time that we took action, and we did. And so I look forward to seeing the NRA in court. It's important that no one is above the law, including the most powerful person in these United States, but also the NRA.
Well, thank you for taking action. And Attorney General Healy, student debt is crippling my generation, and it's hard to know what rights we have as student borrowers. On top of the uncertainty, the Trump administration has repeatedly prioritized predatory for-profit colleges and partisan politics over the best interests of students like us. How can Dem AGs help student borrowers like us?
Well, thank you, Julia. And this is, I guess, a really important topic for everybody who is participating today. I don't think there's a group that's fought harder to protect students than Democratic AGs. You saw us stand up most recently when it came to international students. And international students who, by the way, attend our colleges and universities and contribute over $41 billion to the economy every year. You know, the Trump administration threatened them a few months ago with removal. And we had to announce that we were suing, and then they changed course. So that's important. But that's an example of how we stand up for students. Another example, I don't think that there's anyone we've sued more than Betsy DeVos. She's been horrible, awful. And so, that's taken a few forms. One is to go after these for-profit predatory schools, right, that ripped off students and took advantage of people. They basically would market to students who are first in their generation to go to college, lower income individuals who might qualify for federal student loans, veterans. And we saw this targeting and we went after that. And actually, many of us worked with the Obama administration to put rules in place to prevent this from happening. And unfortunately, Betsy DeVos comes in and rips up those rules and lets all those predatory for-profit schools back in on the action. And so we had to take action against the DeVos administration multiple times to get them to repeal and rescind their actions. Some of you may know something about the borrower defense rule, and that's basically a rule that was there to protect students from being taken advantage of. Of course, they wanted to make changes to that. We actually took them to court. We won. And importantly, what that's resulted in for many of us is we've been able to get those predatory loans discharged, meaning forgiven essentially, for thousands and thousands of students across this country. And not only, has that affected them, but you think about their families, right? Or you think about their future. When you're able to discharge loans like that for so many, and we're talking about millions and millions of dollars in relief, that allows them to have this terrible weight unfairly put on their back removed so that maybe they're able to actually go out and continue and, afford rent, afford car payments, think about, the right kind of resources for education and the like. And that's just an example of where we've been. Some of you also know that we've got these loan servicers who are out there. And just like, back when you were probably in third or fourth grade, we had this meltdown, right, with the economy because a bunch of Wall Street banks, investment banks got greedy and figured out a way to make money off of home mortgages. There are a bunch of subprime mortgages loaned to students and really unfair terms and given to people who had no ability to pay them back. In any event, that resulted in a total meltdown of the economy. And actually, it was Kamala Harris. This is when I first came to know her. I was working in the Massachusetts AG's office. It was state AGs that actually took on those banks. Similarly, a bunch of us have had to take on these loan servicers who are predatory and who are out there making loans to students that they simply can't afford. And so that's been important work. And finally, I was telling you about an office like ours being able to do all sorts of interesting things, neat things, things that have an impact. I set up in my office a student loan assistance unit. So if you're a student in the state of Massachusetts and you've got boatloads of student debt, you're in maybe even in default or facing default, you can call my office and we'll get a lawyer and a mediator on the line working with you to see if there are ways for you to get discharges of loans that were predatory or unfair, or even to work with you on rebalancing some of that so that you can better take advantage of existing good loan programs that are out there. But this is the kind of stuff we do. And, with student loan debt being the fastest form of debt, fastest growing form of debt in this country, we know the crippling effect, Julia, as you say, this has on not just the students and their families, but on our whole economy. So I'm really proud to work with this team of AGs standing up for our students.
Well, thank you, Attorney General Healy. Attorney General Tong, as a college student, healthcare costs can feel scary, especially as it relates to drug costs for things like antibiotics, diabetes medication, and asthma medication. People have asked Congress to address the high cost of prescription drugs. Can you talk about your lawsuits against numerous pharmaceutical and generic drug manufacturers and the effect the lawsuits have had on drug prices?
Yes, thanks, Julia. This is an enduring question. Why are healthcare costs so high and why are drug costs so high? And we've tried to get to the bottom of this. And this, picking up on what General Healy said, is a big part of what we do as state attorneys general. We protect consumers, whether they be student loan borrowers or people like all of us who consume healthcare and pharmaceuticals. I don't think there's anybody on this call among the AGs who's not part of a multi-state coalition that is protecting consumers through protecting our environment, or automobile safety, or protecting our privacy. We are engaged in a 50-state coalition investigating certain aspects of the big technology companies. And where we've really come together in the last few years is on drug prices and on the pharmaceutical industry broadly. The AGs represented here all play a very active role and leadership role in the national opioid investigation and litigations. We're all working on that very closely together. And one of the big ways in which I work on this issue every day is in leading the national generic drug price fixing case. And the way that came up, speaking of the unique tools in our toolbox and our independent authority, a few years ago, my predecessor, George Jepson, his team read an article in the New York Times about a heart drug that jumped 500% in price in just a couple of years. And so they sent out some subpoenas. They said, let's check it out. And they didn't expect to get back a smoking gun, but what they got back were millions upon millions of phone records. And they pumped those phone records into software used by the DEA to go after drug cartels who are dealing illicit drugs. And what they found by pumping these phone records into this software is that major competitors, major generic drug companies, who, by the way, provide 90% of the pharmaceuticals and medicine in this country, for 90% of the prescriptions in this country. What they found is that competitors were talking to each other all the time. And on days in which they increased prices, those discussions, those conversations between competitors and senior executives happened at a frenetic pace over and over again. 1 minute, 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 45 minutes, another minute. And it was just a crazy amount of discussion. And there's no reason why competitors should be talking to each other at that level. And so what we've uncovered is that in the generic drug industry, there is widespread, brazen, rampant, illegal price fixing, which is highly illegal under our nation's antitrust laws. And they illegally divide market share. They say, okay, you guys can have CVS, we'll send drugs to Walgreens, you guys can have Target, and let's not compete against each other. And because of that, drugs that we use every day have gone up thousands upon thousands of %. And we've discovered that the generic drug industry in this country is probably the largest corporate cartel in history, and we fight it every single day.
Thank you, Attorney General Tom. Attorney General Donovan, in the wake of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd's murder, we're seeing a lot of young people protesting for police and criminal justice reform, two issues that you've worked on. Can you talk about the important role attorney generals have in police and criminal justice reform?
Yeah, thank you, Julia. This is, I appreciate the question, and this is one of the most important issues facing not only AGs, but all those in law enforcement, and certainly all those in our communities and in this nation. George Floyd was murdered. I want to commend our colleague and friend Keith Ellison for prosecuting the police officers. He has demonstrated courage, conviction, and competence in pursuing this prosecution. And I think it's an inflection point in our nation and in our criminal justice system that is long overdue, that has disproportionately impacted people of color, the poor, those who suffer from addiction, and the mentally ill. And if you go into any courtroom or any jail in any of our states or in any state in this nation, that is who you will see. And what we have done in the name of public safety has marginalized an entire subset of people, mostly people of color, in the name of public safety, and it hasn't worked. by giving people criminal convictions that have kept them marginalized, that have impacted their ability to get a job, to get housing, to get an education, and to be productive members of our community. It has to stop, and Democratic AGs are leading the way to reform our criminal justice systems. Number one, we need to all invest in expunging old criminal records. They keep people held back with these collateral consequences. We need to make sure that we don't judge people for the rest of their lives on something they did when they were 16, 17, 18 years old. We all make mistakes. Number two, we have to pass bail reform. So many people are held for lack of bail. And it can be from a middle class perspective, a nominal amount. But when you have no money, $500 is a lot of money. And when you're held for that lack of bail and you're sitting in detention, people make rational decisions, and that is to get out of jail. And you go and you enter a plea agreement because that prosecutor who has all the power can amend down the charge, give somebody a plea agreement to get out of jail. But again, you walk out with that criminal record, which is going to be that scarlet letter impacting your educational opportunities and your job opportunities going forward. We also have to transform our criminal justice system by investing in restorative justice and alternative justice, not just punitive justice. We have to understand that folks that go to jail, the thing is this, they're going to get out of jail and they're going to come back to our community, their community. They are members of our community, and it is in our collective best interest to make sure that we have a system that listens to victims, but also understands the root causes of criminal behavior, the issues of addiction, the issues of mental illness, the issues of trauma. We have to do better. We have to understand that this is a turning point, and we have to be willing to lead and to address the issues of racial justice, as well as I said, that the criminal justice system has disproportionately impacted people of color, that Black Lives Matter, that we have to understand that this is the time that we can lead to truly transform our nation, to truly believe in equal protection under the law, to truly believe that people can do better if given the opportunity. And when we talk about a safe environment community, we don't talk about jails, we talk about housing, we talk about education, we talk about healthcare, and we talk about jobs.
Thank you, Attorney General Donovan. And then we're going to open it up to the group to talk about immigration. So immigration continues to be an issue we have yet to address widely as a country. How are Democratic AGs working to fix this, reform our immigration system, and protect immigrants? And we could start off with Attorney General William Tong.
Thank you, Julia. This is a very personal question for many of us. As the son of my dad, who was at one point undocumented, and I guess if Donald Trump were here, he'd call me an anchor baby. I'm proud to be the first American in my family. And so because of that, when we get a call, and we've got too many calls of people who've been targeted by ICE, whose lives have been destroyed by ICE. We have ICE trying to deport people who have been in Connecticut since they were 4 years old, since they were toddlers. We've stood on the front lines to protect these families. And I've gone to federal court in Boston and in New York and fought to protect and defend Connecticut immigrants, and we've been successful. And again, this is another example of how we have a unique set of tools in our toolbox to stand up to immigration and customs enforcement, to stand up to an unjust system of immigration law enforcement by the federal government, and to say no when they target our residents and try to take them off the streets and ship them out of the only country they have ever known.
Thank you, Attorney General Tong. And Attorney General Shapiro?
Let me agree with William's comments and just add briefly the plight of dreamers. You know, we've got 5,889 dreamers here in Pennsylvania. States like Tish's has way more, but I think we can all agree, even for one dreamer, going to court to stop Donald Trump from rolling back those protections was the right thing to do. And of course, we won. You know, I choose to look at this in a pretty plain and simple way, right? In Pennsylvania, those 5,889 Dreamers, they were brought here by adults when they were kids. They didn't make a decision about their coming to America. And then they came here. And they were productive in our schools, and they're productive in our economy, and they've bought homes and have credit, and they're doing all the things we asked them to do. And the federal government basically made a deal with them. They said, okay, pay us a small fee, go through a background check, stay out of trouble, tell us where you live, and if you do all that, we won't prioritize your deportation. I mean, that's the basic deal that was made. And that wasn't a deal made with Barack Obama. That was a deal made with the federal government. And then Donald Trump tried to come in here and illegally strip that deal, remove that deal from the equation. We fought back and we won. Now, look, I think we all recognize there has to be a much broader, comprehensive, thoughtful, compassionate discussion about how we reform our immigration laws in this country. That's within the purview of Congress and the president. But until that happens, we are going to make sure that the rules are followed. And I think the Dreamers is a clear example of where the rules weren't followed. We stepped in and we ensured the protection for these Dreamers in our communities.
Thank you, Attorney General Shapiro. And I know you have to go, so just want to thank you for joining us today. And we really enjoyed hearing from you and hearing about all the work you are doing.
Thank you so much.
And we will move on to Attorney General James.
About the Statue of Liberty, which is not too far from where my office is. And that lady in the harbor is a beacon of hope and opportunity for so many across the world. And as a result, our country is a country of immigrants. And I'm reminded of the book by President Kennedy, A Nation of Immigrants. Our culture and our country is made richer by their contributions. Our economy is made more prosperous because of their hard work. And this president has not hidden his animus towards immigrant. He's not disguised his hatred and by using efforts to keep individuals who are seeking freedom and opportunity out of this country. And so just because the president has this animus towards immigrants doesn't mean he can circumvent or violate the law. And that's exactly what his administration has tried to do over and over again. In addition to that, his administration has attempted to pit one group of individuals against the other. And we find ourselves now more divided than we've ever been since the Civil War. And we need to remain united, and we need to be reminded of what brings us together and the fact that we have more in common than not. And over the past year and a half, since I've had the opportunity to serve in this office, we've had two major victories in Supreme Court. Again, blocking a citizenship question from the census. And I hope all of you young people out there who definitely are the future. No movement in this country has not been led by anyone else but young people. It's not been led by politicians. It's been led by young people who believe in a cause and in a cause greater than themselves. Our office has also been successful in, again, protecting DACA arrivals or childhood arrivals, individuals who arrived in this country and who know no other country other than this one. And so it's really critically important that we support the Dreamers. And the census is so really critically important. If we're going to have an accurate count, it's really critically important that all individuals, again, fill out the census. Everyone matters, and therefore everyone should be counted. And we are still in court right now because this administration seeks to not include the information of immigrants and seeks to change the deadline for which we collect that data. And so it's already had a chilling effect. But it's up to young people and all of you who are on this call today to make sure that we fill out the census. And so it's really, that's what is really critically important, and standing up for immigrants each and every day and recognizing our humanity as a whole. And so I really, again, want to thank you, Julia, for that question.
Thank you, Attorney General James. We're going to move on to Attorney General Frosch. Climate change is a big issue for my generation, and Democratic Attorney Generals have taken over 300 actions to protect the environment. Can you talk about the work that Democratic AGs are doing to combat Trump's EPA and protect our planet's future?
Yes, thanks very much, Julia. Donald Trump, when he was sworn into office, embarked on a climate destruction plan. He had his administrator at EPA, first it was Scott Pruitt, who, when he wasn't joyriding around the country on private jets, was dismantling every Obama administration protection against the emission of climate endangering emissions like methane, like carbon. And they ripped away the protections that had been put in place on emissions from cars, on trucks, on industries, on power plants, on landfills, you name it. And the attorneys general on this panel and the Democrats around the country, and especially, I want to say, Attorney General Javier Becerra in California, Tish James, and Maura Healey have led in stopping each and every one of these attempts to undermine our environmental protections. My office is leading one that brings together two very important principles for us in Maryland: protection of the Chesapeake Bay and protection of our climate. Donald Trump proposes to open up the East Coast and most of the rest of the coast in the United States to drilling. It's dangerous, it's reckless, and we filed suit to stop the precursor to offshore drilling, the seismic testing that will have to occur so that oil companies can locate the deposits. But the Chesapeake Bay is a national treasure. It is housed mostly in the state of Maryland and Virginia. And it's an estuary that is incredibly rich, but that flushes very slowly. And anytime you have oil drilling, it causes emissions of oil, and they flow into the Chesapeake Bay. Even if you don't have a catastrophic spill, it endangers our bay. And it, of course, opens up the country to the entire coasts on the east and the west to this kind of pollution and to catastrophic events. But also the end game is we're going to take up more fossil fuels and burn them and cause the climate, which is already on fire, to burn even faster. So attorneys general, I think, have been incredibly effective in halting Donald Trump's initiatives in this regard. If he gets another 4 years, I'm afraid that even our valiant attempts will ultimately be overtaken by their persistence in violating the law, changing the protections that we have in place. So we'll keep fighting, but we need the college Democrats and everybody else in this country to get us a new president.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Attorney General Frosch. And we are coming up on the hour, and I know you all are doing such important work, including saving the post office. So I want to make sure we stick with that time. If you all wouldn't mind giving some closing remarks for folks who are watching to take with them into this election season. And we are running short on time, so if we could try to keep closing remarks a little brief, but we will start with Attorney General Tom.
Just vote confidently. Don't let Donald Trump scare you. We're going to do everything we can to protect the integrity of this election. It's going to happen. It's going to happen fairly, transparently, and accurately. So vote confidently, and let's get this done.
Thank you, Attorney General Tom. Attorney General Healey.
Yeah, the other thing I'd say is run for office or get involved in campaigns, pick someone who you think should be in office, and go for it. I think that engagement is key. I have been so psyched to see so many people who worked on my campaign, who are now, for example, on city council, in state legislature, do that. And remember, this is a time, young people out there, where you need to register and get as many of your peer groups involved as possible. And don't let them be jaundiced by what's happened in DC politics. We have a powerful moment right now to transcend so much in this country, and you guys are in the front leading on that. So thank you so much, College Dems.
Thank you, AG Healy. AG Donovan?
Thank you, Julia, and thank you to the College Democrats. Look, you guys make us better candidates. You make us better elected officials because you hold us accountable. We hear you. Keep speaking up, keep speaking out about the issues that are important to not only you, but to this country, because you are making our country better, and we can do better and will do better. And I just echo my friend William Tong. Vote, 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 vote. This is the most consequential election in our history, and we need everybody at the table. So again, we thank you for what you're doing for your states, for your community, but for this country. Let's finish the job on November 3rd and elect Joe Biden president.
Thank you. Attorney General Frosch?
Julia, I want to leave you with words of Robert Kennedy. 1968, he was running for president. We were in the middle of the Vietnam War. We were in the middle of a struggle for civil rights. It's very similar, but not as bad as today. He was speaking at a rally in Indianapolis, had to tell the crowd that just hours before Martin Luther King had been assassinated. And what he said was this: what we need in the United States is not division. What we need in the United States is not hatred. What we need in the United States is not violence or lawlessness, but love and wisdom and compassion for one another and a feeling of justice towards those who still suffer in our country. That's what attorneys general stand for. That's what we're fighting for. Please, as my colleagues have said, go vote, get us a new president, elect Joe Biden. Thank you.
Thank you. And Attorney General James?
Yeah. What's at stake? Everything is at stake. Our values. So vote for decency. Vote for honesty. Vote for restoring, again, the moral leadership of this country. The coalition of Democratic attorney generals in this country has truly been a force, especially over the last 4 years. And because of our partnership, we have been the strongest force fighting back against the Trump administration's unlawful and harmful rules. And we've been successful in many of these attempts, and we've been successful in getting them removed and not from being implemented. So now, my young people, my young scholars, it's up to you. You've got to vote. We view the law as both a sword and as a shield, but now it's up to you to stand in formation and to vote. One of my sheroes is Barbara Jordan, and she once said, "We believe in equality, and we do not believe in privileges for any individuals, and that everyone should come to the table, and everyone should feast from democracy. Let us restore democracy back in this country. Vote, my friends. Vote like never before." Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you all for joining us for this panel today. And thank you to the viewers for watching. Things are only going to change if we all show up. So request your ballots today. Go out to vote in November if you can, and run for office as well. It's what President Obama said in his farewell address. If we don't like what we see, grab a clipboard, get some signatures, show up, dive in, persevere. And if you want to learn more about all the work Democratic attorney generals across the country are doing, go to dems.ag for more. Thank you all.